We are going bankrupt as a nation.
We have terrorists in this country in jail. Why can't you be treated like everyone else is a terrorist? You seem distressed from this topic.
I'm not so much distressed. Bored to tears. The suggestion being made that this is now the new norm. No, it's the new norm amongst HR professionals.
Hello, I'm JJ Nishobi and welcome to the Daily Expresso. Today I'm joined by one of the most influential political strategists of the 21st century, Gawain Towler. Gawain has worked alongside Nigel Farage since the early noughties and was instrumental in the rise of UKIP, the Brexit campaign, and now the surge of Reform UK. Gawain, how are you?
I'm well.
I heard, is this true, that Nigel offered you the job, your first job with Nigel, down the pub?
How could that possibly be true? No, surely not.
Just what I've heard.
Yeah, true. And it took me about that much of a pint to say yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was offering me. Well, it was interesting. He's interesting. He was fun. We agree on most things, and he was offering me 3 times what I was earning as a freelancer.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't a tough choice.
Fair enough. So today, Gawain has been at a Reform Party press conference, and top of the agenda was talk about a new promise made by Nigel Farage. The Reform leader has vowed to end indefinite leave to remain, which basically means migrants will no longer be able to obtain permanent settlement in the UK after 5 years, and people wanting to stay longer will be forced to reapply for a new visa. Gawain, why is this so important?
Because of the sheer cost of recent migration and what ILR will allow people to do. Once you have ILR, you can claim for all sorts of benefits and all sorts of options. And more than 50% of particularly the Boris wave, and this is very much talking about the Boris wave, because within a year, people who arrived in that period will start to be able to apply for indefinite leave to remain. And we reckon we're underestimating, for various reasons which I can go into, that about 800,000 people will take that route. If that is the case, over their lifetime, we're looking at, and again, we think this is an underestimate, over £260 billion of taxpayers' money being spent on these people. Why? Why should the British taxpayer fund this? And it's unlimited. It just goes on. And part of the problem we've found when we were developing this policy is that the government won't give you figures. Mm-hmm. We've discovered that 1 in 6 people on universal credit is a non-British national. But they can again go on that once they've got ILR. And so if you abolish the whole process of ILR, then the only people who can stay here are those who get the visa, and the demands on those visas will be increased as well. So language demands and the amount of employment income you're getting.
Well, so you've said, I think 60,000. You want to raise 61,000 for the income per year.
Yeah,
that does seem high.
Why?
Well, I have colleagues who are settled in this country on indefinite leave to remain, who speak perfect English and work as journalists in this country, providing the news for the country. They won't be able to stay here.
But they are a tiny minority of the number of people who come over, the vast number of people who come over.
I don't think they are a tiny minority.
They are.
Okay, so
well, at least 50% are not working, have never worked, are unlikely ever to work.
So the people
they are clearly a minority.
So the people who are the minority, you're happy to say to them, well, sorry, tough luck.
We have to make decisions. That is the problem of government. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be wonderful. But it is not fair right now that the British public have to fund this, and will have to fund the massive increase in this. The government does not provide many of the statistics. We've been trying to get the statistics. We have to make assumptions based on that which we do know. But if, as I say, 1 in 6 people who are on universal credit, which is looking for work supposedly, are foreign nationals, again, why? Why should the British public fund this?
When you speak of the Boris wave, it's mostly Ukrainians.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. The Boris wave, the increasing schemes from the Boris wave is mostly for people from Ukraine, Hong Kong, and Afghanistan. Those are the Boris wave. Those are the three most
that's
nationalities.
2.3 million people. That's not true.
From the Boris wave,
yes, over the period of the last
Ukraine,
2019 to now,
settling Ukraine refugees, people from Hong Kong and Afghanistan. That is the largest amount of nationalities from the Boris wave.
No,
that is the majority.
Since Boris got in, and then since the Tories, since the referendum where they flipped the numbers, so it was no longer EU nationals, were nominally EU nationals. Since then, we have seen a significant rise, and not just the illegals. I mean, almost putting the illegals to the side in this argument. That's clearly an issue, but not this one. Since then, we have seen, and it's not just Ukrainians, it's not just Hong Kongers, and it's certainly not just Afghans. It is from across the board. There's a huge number from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and elsewhere. There is, and it's not just the individuals, because once you get your visa, once you get your indefinite leave to remain, you can then bring your members of your family and things of this sort. Again, why? Why should we allow that? Why? Well, it makes no sense to us.
Well, surely you can stop that from happening. You can limit how many people you can bring, how many dependents you can bring, without punishing people who have lived in this country and have indefinite leave to remain.
Well, we are
followed
basically
the rules.
saying,
essentially, you're saying people who have followed the rules as the rules were set at the time and now going to be punished and told, actually, it doesn't matter.
Well, we have made it very
You
clear
must
that
now
anybody
leave.
who's applied for citizenship, there's absolutely no question of going back on that. They're British citizens. End. Just period.
Okay.
But indefinite leave to remain are not British citizens, and they should not, and we believe they should not have the same rights as British citizens in Britain. To us, this isn't controversial, and this is normal globally. This is not a weird thing. We're the outlier here. What we're trying to do is bring our country to an international norm. You don't get many of these rights in other countries. You just don't.
Well,
so why should we be an outlier when it is penalising our people?
Labour have already announced plans to increase the time to 10 years.
Yes, they have, and that's true. But all they're doing is pushing the can down the road. They're just pushing the can down the road. No, we have to stop it at source. We have to just say no more.
And small businesses that rely on foreign labour, hotels that rely on foreigners to come over here and work in hospitality.
Well, we've made it very clear when it came to the new visa scheme that's being suggested, acute worker visas, that particularly the care home sector, that would come under that. But we can't see too much of a crystal ball. We don't have a crystal ball as to what the acute issues are going to be going down the line. That's something that has to be decided at the time rather than. But we do know that the social care sector, that care sector, will be one of those things.
Which would mean what? That people, as long as they're working, then they could.
Well, in that field. But of course, we know that there's been vast. And even, good Lord, even Ed Davey admits that there's been corruption and failures in these systems. And when he's starting to talk like this, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, stop running out in front of a brass band and actually said something vaguely sensible. It's extraordinary. But the things, other sectors, we don't know. Our main point here is that since Blair, really, with the change of the way that our immigration system, both legal and illegal, but we're talking about illegal at this point, has been made, and the vast increase of numbers, when we were told that 6,000 were going to get a particular benefit and over 58 times as many people got that benefit, this is just mad, and it doesn't work. The GDP, we've been told for decades, don't talk about this because it's about the economy. The GDP increases, but the GDP per capita hasn't. And the vast costs that have been placed on the British public and the taxpayer over these years has not resulted in our economy getting better or growing. It just hasn't. If what we were told was true, then we would be in a much better economic status now. And it hasn't. And we aren't. So therefore we have to address this. We have to address it seriously.
And you think this is a
very serious way of doing it.
You think the general British public are going to be in favour of this?
Oh, I'm certain of that.
Okay.
Absolutely certain of that. I suspect they'd be much stronger in many cases.
I question it. My wife, for example, is American. Yep. So in order for her to move to this country now, you'd have her jumping through hoops in order to make sure she must earn 60,000 minimum. She must fit in this, must fit into that. But ultimately, an American citizen coming and living in the UK technically does not pose any kind of threat. And and as I say, if I look at my colleagues in the office, I sit next to a woman from Italy, I sit next to a woman from Spain, journalists who earn less than £60,000.
I think there's an interesting
were part of. They were here when we were part of Europe.
But I think we've made it clear that particularly on our European friends, that this doesn't cover them because they have a different system, a different scheme for Europeans to take permanent residence. It's not through the ILR. So I think there is a difference there, and actually, when in the press conference, Farage was very clear about that. There was that difference when it comes to European. But the other thing I think in the acute workers visa scheme that I think is extremely interesting and valuable is that if you wish to take advantage of it as an employer, then you also have to pay into levy to train up a British citizen to be able to do that job. Because we've become an almost Ponzi scheme, in that we bring in cheaper labour. You've got vast areas of the economy where the minimum wage has become the maximum wage because employers can get away with it. It has helped boost profits, large but big firms. Well, if it means we have to pay people a little bit better, that's not a bad thing. That really isn't a bad thing. I think we should be encouraged. Do you remember Lord Sainsbury during the EU referendum, sitting there in the committee room in the House of Commons being questioned? And he said, "What's the bet?" And he said, "Oh well, if we do that, there'll be a reduction in the number of EU people coming over here. And we might have to put up wages, and that's a bad thing." No, it isn't. It really isn't. So the training of a British citizen. So therefore, we don't have an acute need for employees if we actually train our own people. One of the problems with nurses is when the bursary, the nursing training bursary was brought in or taken out by George Osborne, 50,000 fewer Brits trained as nurses. Mm-hmm. What's the average number of nurses we've had to rip out of the third world and take out of the global south where they've done their training? About 50,000 a year. Yeah. So it is not good for our people, and it's also not good for their people. Mm-hmm. We look at it as a question of fairness. We look at it as a question of economics. We are going bankrupt. We are going bankrupt as a nation. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. So therefore, we can't continue spending this vast sum of money. Something will break. And I don't want our country to break.
Okay. Let's move on. Sir Keir Starmer confirmed yesterday that the UK will now recognise a Palestinian state. The Prime Minister said the largely symbolic move was intended to revive the hope of peace for the Palestinians and Israelis. It comes ahead of the UN General Assembly this week, with other nations, including Australia and Canada, making similar moves shortly before Sir Keir's announcement. In a video message, the Prime Minister said the moment has now arrived to recognise a Palestinian state. Nigel Farage said Hamas and a Palestinian state are inseparable for now. This is typical of Starmer. He can't really decide where he stands. Whatever the caveats in his statement, this announcement is a surrender to terrorism and a betrayal of Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu branded the move absurd and simply a reward for terrorism. Gawain, do you think this is the right decision to make?
No.
Why?
No. Because, within minutes of Starmer saying what he said yesterday, we're going to recognise a Palestinian state. And one does have to ask questions, what does he mean by that? Is he recognising Hamas as the legitimate government of the Palestinian state? Are we going to have an embassy from Palestine here filled with Hamas operatives? Terrorist operatives that we classify as terrorists but under diplomatic status? No, bad idea. But within minutes, despite the fact that, of course, Starmer stands there and in response said, no, this isn't a reward for terrorism. This is not a reward for the pogrom on October the 7th. This is not a reward for murdering women and babies and all the rest of it. This is not a reward for holding hostages for all this time. No, it's not. Hamas, immediately, this is a victory for Hamas. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it is. It is. And I think we are foolish. It is craven. And I'm sorry to say, it is to do with internal UK politics, not to do with what's happening in the Middle East. It is chasing votes. The Jewish population of this country is 250,000. Mm-hmm. The Muslim population of this country is significantly greater than that. There has been huge pressure, particularly from your party or whatever that happens to be doing at present. But even though the Gaza independents, or call them what you will, are in a mess, and it seems impossible to set up a party, they're still winning by-elections East London. So the pressure that Starmer is under politically here is what has driven this. It is not about what's happening in the Middle East.
But I feel people are going to see through this, because Starmer can't say on one hand, I recognise Palestine as a state now, when he's still selling arms to Israel to do what the UN is saying is a genocide.
And again, who's he recognising? Is he recognising the Palestinian Authority, or is he recognising Hamas? What is Palestine? What is it? It's a largely symbolic move. Well, yeah, it's pointless. You shouldn't be making symbolic moves of this status. And, I mean, the idea of a two-state solution right now is for the birds. Hamas, after October the 7th, talked about basically driving the Zionist entity into the sea and killing the Jews at it. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. How can we have got back to this point when you have a horrible civil war in Sudan, killing more people, when you have what's happening in Syria and the Druze being massacred, when you have all that going on, and yet the world focuses on one conflict alone. And why is that? Because it's Jews. I'm sorry, but it is. I have not seen such anti-Semitism in this country. I'm not saying everybody's against Israel or against Netanyahu is anti-Semitic. I'm not. But I have not, and I've witnessed it personally when I've been out with Jewish friends. It is abhorrent to me. And it should be abhorrent to everybody in this country, which did fight and stand up to anti-Semitism in just living memory. Mm-hmm. I find it is craven, utterly craven on the part of this government.
Well, Starmer has insisted Hamas can have no future, no role in government, no role in security.
How does he decide who the government of Palestine is? Surely that's being a colonial power. Is he saying that he's in charge of Gaza City? Does he decide who they elect or they have as their government? Does he? Because he can't say, I recognise you, and by the way, your government, the one you voted for, that you support, that is an anti-Semitic organisation, that does wish the death of Jews, they can't be in government. Well, mate, what are you going to do? Send in a colonial governor and the brigade of guards? Well,
perhaps we've seen the Western countries do this in the continent of Africa and Asia before, many times. You don't like someone in power that those dictators get. Gaddafi was perhaps the most recent one.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. So it's in living memory, it's happened many times.
And it's been a disaster. Since decolonization, it has been a disaster time and time again. I can only think of one time it was possibly successful, and that was Sierra Leone. That I think. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of the populace of Sierra Leone welcomed it, and they wanted that in order to sort out what was going on. I don't think you'd have the same reaction in Gaza or the West Bank.
So you think the Britain should just stay out of it altogether?
We certainly shouldn't be recognising Palestine. Not this entity.
Not Hamas.
When that is this entity.
Yeah.
It's a dishonest thing, and I am absolutely certain it is driven by British politics, not by the global issues.
Okay. This week, the Daily Express sent out our intrepid investigator, Richard Ashmore, to Syria with the task of speaking to one of the most infamous people to have been born in the UK. I am talking, of course, about Shamima Begum. Shamima travelled to join ISIS at the age of 15 a decade ago and was captured alongside thousands of foreign-born extremists who had travelled to Syria and Iraq to join the death cult regime. When it emerged, the London-born Begum had survived the fall of ISIS. She was stripped of her British citizenship in 2019. Begum, who had 3 children who died after she arrived in Syria, has lost all of her appeals against the removal of her citizenship in the UK courts, including the final refusal by the Supreme Court last year. Unfortunately, Richard's interview didn't exactly go to plan. Have a watch of this.
But when we put these comments to Begum, she responded with no comment, whilst also trying to avoid our cameras.
Of course. And the head of the camp just said to us now, the political landscape changing now that weirdly Trump back in is potentially a way home.
No, yeah. I already saw the camera in my face. I'm not trusting this.
Sorry. Is there more of a hope of getting out and getting home in some way?
No comment for me. Yeah.
Is that all you ask? No, I mean, is there anything you want to say as yourselves that without a question, with just anything you want to say, basically, in terms of what's going on right now, how you feel, and it's an open space, and essentially we can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm going to look that on my basically jump.
So Shamima Begum agreed to be interviewed and filmed by Daily Express, and then
she clearly chose her mind.
Yeah. She's not painting herself in the greatest light there. What do you make of her and the British decision to strip her of her?
Well, I think it was a decision that has very strong support across the UK. I don't think. I'm sure there are some partisans who say, "Bring her back. It's wonderful." She was misled. But you do have to take responsibility for your actions. She stayed. I'm sad that she lost her children. As a human level, of course. But I do not think, and I know that
you don't think we should return her?
I know that the Trump White House did have some questions about it, and Nigel Farage did so. Well, she's not. It's not like she's Jihadi John. She's not out there in that sense. Is she herself an exact physical threat? I don't know.
Nigel said, "I don't classify her as an all-out ISIS killer."
Well, precisely, like Jihadi John.
Yeah, he's quite philosophical on the issue.
But that came after something that Trump had said about the same thing. Maybe would, and the question is, with the new regime in Syria, and I think this what Trump was responding to, we have even less knowledge of what's going on and what is happening. We do know that they are also ISIS. Formerly ISIS people, they are very much on that extreme side of Islam. They're a very militant Islamist group. They are massacring the Druze. They have been killing Christians themselves. This is going on. So there are questions. But that being said, personally, no, I think there's no way that this country will take her back. And maybe there is an example being made of her, but she made the example of herself by going there in the first place.
Well, she was 15. She was a child when she went over. If reform become the next government, could you see a way for Nigel Farage to say, as Prime Minister, yes, she's British, she's our problem?
Well,
in the same way,
she's had nationality. She's
revoked.
not.
Yes, but in the same way that we look to countries like Albania and we say to them, take back your criminals from our lands, should we not be saying she's one of our criminals? Yes, we revoked her citizenship, washed our hands of that, but we tell other countries to take back their criminals from us. We should be doing the same, no?
If people come here and they try and they often, one of the reasons they arrive here to tear up their nationality documents. I mean, there was some guy said, I rip up I am no longer, actually it doesn't work like that. I'm no longer Pakistani because I've torn up my passport. Well, it's a bit more to it than just tearing up your passport. But she has been stripped of that citizenship. She went and joined an organisation. It's not just a criminal. This is an organisation that is committed to the destruction of the West and all that it stands for. This isn't petty larceny. This isn't growing drugs or doing things like this. Or this is literally joining an organisation that wishes the end of our civilization.
Absolutely.
So
we have terrorists in this country in jail. Why can't she be treated like everyone else who's a terrorist?
Because she has been stripped of her nationality. She chose to go abroad to fight against our interests. That is traitorous. Mm-hmm. That is literally, to my mind, the definition of traitor. And no, personally, I don't want a traitor back. I really don't. And we have gone, all the courts have gone through it. It's gone right the way to the top. Yep. It's done. In my mind, it's done. As I say, I'm sorry that she's lost her children and things of that sort. That's on a human basis. But I do not think that this country has any reason to welcome her back or even let her back without a welcome.
NATO guidance claims terms such as airmen are offensive and should be replaced with gender-inclusive alternatives. Under the Western Military Alliance's language manual, this term should be replaced with Air Force personnel, pilots or Air Corps instead. It warns that gendered terms are outdated and risk alienating women. The manual contains several recommendations for NATO staff, instructing them to challenge unconscious bias and raise awareness of how language affects our behaviours and attitudes. It continues that gender-inclusive language is becoming the new norm and that there is a set of techniques to avoid the generic masculine form. This comes a week after it was revealed the Royal Yachting Association deems man overboard an offensive term in its own inclusive language guide. Spelthorne Borough Council has also come under fire this month for suggesting the word manpower should be replaced by the less offensive term staffing. Gawain, what a bunch of absolute gobbledygook. Gawain, what a bunch of gobbledygook. You seem distressed from this topic.
I'm not so much distressed, bored to tears. The suggestion being made that this is now the new norm. No, it's the new norm amongst HR professionals. It's not the new norm in the country at large. I'm sorry. Somebody falls off the side of the boat. But, no, don't. You might get into trouble if you say man, they're drowned now. And who cares if you're a woman and you fall overboard and somebody shouts, man overboard? No, how dare you? You can't call me that, glug. It's utterly ridiculous.
So this is not a positive development for you?
Oh, yeah. I know, seriously. I can see the military strategist in Warsaw and Peking, looking across to NATO and said, well, that's us ruined, isn't it? Nothing we can do about that. Why can't they just say airwoman?
I don't know.
Why,
I don't know.
Why does it, you can have airman.
It's got to be gender
because
neutral.
a bloke is a bloke.
Yeah.
So that's an able seaman.
Yeah.
And there is a woman doing the same job at the same rank.
Uh-huh.
Why should that not be an able sea woman?
No, you can't. It's
Why
got
not?
to be neutral according to NATO.
Yeah, because the thing that military really are is neutral. I mean, just we need to be upskilling, up-training, up-teching our militaries. We need to... And, let's be honest, most people joining the military are men.
Yes.
Yeah. And this sort of thing turns away the sort of worry stinkers that we need in the military to actually fight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, do I really have to join an organisation like that? Why would you? And so, given the parlous state of world affairs, we need to be doing everything we can to increase recruitment, increase retention, increase the spending and tech so we can compete. Because without a serious military force, we are essentially nothing. The great Woodrow Wilson comment, speak softly, but carry a big stick. Right now, it's a twiglet, but I'm not entirely sure if it's a twiglet or a twiglet. It's just preposterous.
What do you think Putin and Xi Jinping are thinking? They're sat around their little...
If they can contain their laughter.
Evil. Yeah.
If they can contain their laughter. It's preposterous. Do you remember just before the election, there was this fuss in the military about they had to take this one day a month to do sort of brotherhood days. Mm-hmm. If you've ever trained with the military, every day
is brotherhood day. Yeah.
You don't fight. You do fight for king and country, but you don't really fight for king and country. You fight for this guy standing next to you in the trench. Mm-hmm. Every single day is brotherhood day. And then you had the temerity of the Grant Shapps, who was then defence minister, slating the military for introducing these things. Well, do you think the military would have introduced them on their own without the government telling them to? Just ridiculous. And what it does, it completely undermines that esprit de corps that you need, that you're constantly checking, have I said the right thing?
Yeah.
Who cares? Have I trained properly?
Well, if NATO are wasting their time and money doing this kind of education and training...
It's not. I doubt it costs that much, to be fair.
They've got to change it in the manuals. They've got to print those off again.
Marginal. Every manual in the country would cost less than a tank, I suspect. So it's marginal in that sense. But it is not marginal in their headspace, in the moral space. Again, why... And this is NATO, of course, but the rest of it is UK. How is it that this country has the largest proportion of HR professionals? What are they for, in the large part? Why? Why have we become... I know we have a very impressive service sector, but do we really have to do HR to such an extent? It seems to me these are non-productive jobs. They do very little. Obviously, we have the legislation and equality and things of this sort to stop clear examples of racism or sexism or whatever. That legislation exists. But why do we need an entire cadre of people stopping people getting on with their work, doing what they do, in the case of the military, defending our nation? It's preposterous.
This would be enough for me to say maybe we need to reduce our spending with NATO. If this is the kind of stuff that they want to be preaching, maybe we should be giving them a little bit less cash.
I don't care how much cash we give NATO. I do care how much cash we give our own armed forces. I think NATO, there are question marks over it. There are issues with it, but it is a defensive alliance, and I think it is necessary in a naughty world. And particularly given the growth of China and particularly with drone tech and all the rest of it, and the fact that America has to pivot from the Europe side to the Pacific side. Then if we wish to defend ourselves, we have to defend ourselves. So drop those twiglets and pick up the big stick.
Gawain, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. That is all we've got time for today. Thank you for watching the Daily Expresso, and join us again tomorrow where I'll be joined by Belinda DeLucy. Bye-bye.